Moving on now to the last part of Lesson 2, Lesson 2B, where we will talk about the describe method and the describe properties that you can retrieve from data. Describe is one of those non-tool methods that you can call on data, and what it does actually is create another object. It returns an object that you can grab as a variable, and then that object allows you to retrieve multiple data properties about the thing you called on to start with. So on the right, we have just a few examples. Same data as before, so we're pointing to a geodatabase, pointing to a layer, streams layer. And the way describe works is it's arcpy.describe with a capital D. And then in the parentheses goes the data or the object or the layer, the workspace, the geodatabase, the raster, whatever spatial thing you were trying to describe. And then you have to create a describe object. It returns an object, a complex object, from which you have to pull the properties that you want. So there are multiple ways to do this. You don't have to do this line of code by itself, but this is just a nice straightforward way to start as a beginner. So we're creating this object. I'm calling it DSC for describe. And then down here, I'm calling on multiple properties. So here's a way to get the geometry type. DSC.shapeType is a way that you can get whether it's a point, line, or polygon. DSC.dataType down here, DSC.dataSetType. So these are different ways to get information about the layer, which are typically used to either report information back to the user or to use in an if statement to only run a workflow if the data is the right type. So only run the clip tool if the clip layer is a polygon, otherwise it would throw an error. Only do my buffer if the coordinate system is projected. So you can ask all these questions of the data properties and then control how your script will run. The last one here is catalog path, which is literally the path, which is up here as well. It's the one I supplied, but there's a way to print that out because that might be something the user might want to know. Like, where did the data go? I just ran a tool. I want to tell the user where it got saved to. So I can print out the full path so someone can find it. So here's what the code looks like. And then down here is what would get returned. So for shape type, I got polyline. Data type, feature layer. Data set type, feature class. File path is the whole path. So if you describe a feature class in a geodatabase compared to a shapefile, compared to a raster, you'll see the different things that get returned here. So I recommend on your own time, just throw some data in a describe and play around with it. We'll take a deeper look at this more in lesson 3. So this is just a little overview about describe, just to kind of ease into it, and then we'll see what else it can do. So here are a couple of examples. These are from the help. And on the one on the left, we're just kind of doing what we did on the previous slide, but printing out the output a little bit differently. Here we're printing it all in one line. So notice that you can concatenate your describe properties with a plus sign to add your own text to have it on one line. And then over here, we're using an if statement. If has attr, so it has attribute. If my describe object has the attribute name, then print out the name of my object. The thing with these describe properties is there are a defined set of properties, and you can call for any property on any type of data. But if you call for a property that doesn't exist for a certain data set or type, then it'll return an error. For example, if I try to get the shape type of a raster, if what I was describing is a raster, and then I try to get the shape type, it's going to give me an error. So this on the right is a nice way to avoid errors in your code if you're not sure what you're describing. Maybe the thing you're describing isn't hard-coded into the script. Maybe the thing you're describing will be passed in by a user and you have no idea what they're going to give you. So you don't want to try to get the shape type of a raster. You don't want to try to get the cell size of a vector. So if has attribute is just a nice way to keep your code clean and prevent errors. Here's another more complex example where we're using describe to just report back some properties to the user. But notice we're printing it out not to the console window, but we're reporting these properties back out to a text file. So I'm showing this to you just so you can see another example of how we can write out to a text file as a nice way to log information. So here we're creating a text file, setting the workspace, setting the data. We're opening the text file with our open function, describing the data, and then we're using .write on a few different lines, .write to just print out basically information to the text file. So this code would yield this exact text file. Let's wrap up lesson 2 with a little putting it together, and this is a code snippet that we will actually do in class. So we'll get the chance to do this in class. But if you are watching this on your own, take a look at this code snippet, and there are 8 different errors in this code. And part of learning to write code is learning to train your eye to find the issues. So I'm not going to go into the answers right now, although they are on the next slide. But this will be a little activity we can do in class or to do it on your own. And lastly, where you should be by the end of this lesson, you should be able to look at code like this and know what each line is doing and understand why it's there, what it's doing, and why it was written the way it was, and maybe how else it could be written. And then the other side of it is, could you write something like this on your own? Would you be able to start from scratch and build this yourself? So that's kind of the goal for this lesson, is to be able to build something like this yourself, and not just the basics of run one tool, but the whole package with setting the overwrite, checking for existence. Here we're using the arcpy.exists with an if statement, understanding how we use variables and if and arcpy, and putting all the pieces together. So if you're not there yet, hopefully after you do the exercise, you will be. And if you're still not there, then come see me and I can help you out. Now you're ready to start the exercise for Lab 2B, where we'll be working with arcpy methods. In class, we'll be doing some hands-on activities where we'll go over setting up a couple of simple code samples to run data only if it exists, to allow data to overwrite and play around with how the messaging works. And then on your own, you'll be walking through the exercise from our book, Chapter 5, just to be exposed to some of the other methods that are out there that we didn't mention. And then you'll be taking a partially created script and modifying it to add these new methods in. So good luck, have fun, and happy coding.